Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise for my second speech tonight. Democracy in action. You know, when I think about childcare, I think of many stressful evenings with my wife, figuring out where our kids are going to go and how we're going to pay for it. Childcare costs, and it's costed me personally, a lot of money. In fact, when my son was born on January 4th, my eldest son, Declan, and I remember joking with my wife at the time, oh crap, this is going to cost me an extra 15 grand in childcare costs. And it did. And I was much happier when my second child, Nicholas, was born. He was born in November, and I'm like, great, I'll make up for some of those savings with my second child. Unfortunately, my third is born in January as well, so I'll be at a loss once again. Mr. Speaker, now, I live in one of the areas of Canada with the highest costs of living. We not only have a housing shortage, we have a daycare shortage as well. I am privileged to stand in this House, and I can admit I am in the regulated system in British Columbia. My daycare facility, Koala Montessori in Abbotsford, where my kids go, is now a regulated center under the agreement that was signed with the Government of Canada. My fees went from approximately $950 for my second child down to $450. That said, Mr. Speaker, like all of us in this chamber, I am a high-income earning Canadian. And I know that there are monumental wait lists to get into the facility where my second son goes. In fact, I was lucky enough, it was like winning the lottery, getting a spot in this wonderful daycare facility. And it is indeed wonderful. There are so many early learning childhood educators that have had a positive impact on my children's life. In fact, the other day, my son Declan, who also went to Koala, we were picking up his younger brother Nicholas, and he's like, Dad, can I come in with you and see Miss Elsie? And for my son to be able to go in and see his old teacher and to give her a great big hug, like, that warms my heart. How could it not? So I'm lucky that my children have access to wonderful early learning educators who've had an amazing impact on their life. I think of some of my constituents who work there, Miss Krishmali and Miss Maria, who took my son Nicholas when he was 1 year old into their arms and loved him like their own child. How could you not love these women who devote their time and energy away from their own children in many cases to do these jobs and help our young children grow into wonderful children ready to go to school. I'll say the Koala Montessori, you know, sometimes I feel like at my house it's chaotic. I've got 3 kids, 2 boys, and my 2 boys are running around, and our place is a mess. My middle child, Nicholas, he is going to be bigger. He's going to be more than 250 pounds when he's older. He's definitely going to be like 6'5" plus. And when he goes down the hallway, he's smashing every door he finds. He's hitting all the walls like he is made to play football or rugby or basketball. This kid, it's just ingrained in him. At the same time, he'll go to his bedroom and he'll take his t-shirt and he'll fold it so nicely together. Or he'll want to do the dishes with mom and dad, and he'll work so carefully to clean the cup or pour his own cup of milk or water when he's at the dinner table. That's early learning. That's the impact of the early learning educators that have had such a positive role in my child's life. Mr. Speaker, my riding is a big one. It's 22,000 square kilometers of awesomeness. But not every family has what I have. I have 31 different bands in multiple Indigenous nations in British Columbia. And I know for Boston Bar First Nation, they're part of the Nzikamak Nation. I know for some of the Statlium bands in the Lillooet region that the positive impact that early learning educators have had on my children is not available to them. I think about the community of Ashcroft in my riding that's seeing a major expansion of the port, where the inland port where the CN and CP rail lines meet. There's great jobs coming into the community. Canadian Tire is investing a lot of money building a warehouse in this small community. There's a huge demand on housing. There is more need to build homes in this community than ever before. The workers that are there, though, they don't have access to an early learning childhood or a daycare facility, early learning educators, let alone nurses and a functioning hospital. Although I see the positive intent of this bill, I've seen the positive impact it's had on a select number of Canadians in British Columbia, one of who I am. I am one of those people who has benefited from this agreement. I worry about my other constituents who have not. I worry about the parents on Mission Friends and Neighbors. It's a Facebook community group in Mission, the second largest community I represent, about parents just seeking a place for their kids to go, not being able to go to work because they can't have access to childcare, or now kind of put into a horrible situation where they see maybe their relative or a neighbor who got into a subsidized facility, yet they have to still pay the market rate with a private provider. Now, in my opinion, the private providers, and many of which who are now public providers, were private providers before this deal. And I know that many of the private providers that aren't covered under this deal have that same commitment to quality education and nurturing care for our children that I receive at my now publicly funded facility. But they don't have access to this program. They might be operating out of their business. It might be a new immigrant who's finding a way to support her children and running a daycare facility inside her home to provide extra income with the high cost of living we face in communities like Mission. So, although I respect the intent of this bill, I'm just wondering why some providers weren't provided the same access to participate that others were. The second point I will raise is that while the government was quick to make arrangements with existing facilities, none of the hard work in Indigenous communities was done. And I reference Indigenous communities because disproportionately there's more children being born into Indigenous communities. It's one of the fastest growing demographics we have in Canada. That's a good thing, but those resources under this framework aren't available at the same level that I can access in downtown Abbotsford. I've heard it tonight, Madam Speaker, that over 60% of my province is a daycare desert. 60% of families don't have access to that quality of care that I have. That needs to change. We have to think in innovative ways to get over that hump. Recently, I had a group of plumbers and business owners that came to Parliament to talk about the skills and labor shortage. These people are hardworking, they're small business owners, and they're faced with an incredible labor shortage right now, something like we've never seen before. They can't keep people and they can't hire enough no matter what they do. In fact, one company in Pitt Meadows, I think it's called Pitt Meadows Plumbing, the owner of the business came to me. In fact, his company alone trains more people than the public trade schools combined in British Columbia. He has a massive impact on the number of skilled trade workers in British Columbia. And he said to me, member from Mission-Matsqui-Fraser Canyon, why don't we incentivize private corporations to build facilities at our offices? Why is there not more effort put into working with the private sector and building those facilities at our headquarters? Imagine a young woman who wants to be a plumber today being able to go on her lunch break at a manufacturing facility in Pitt Meadows or in Mission and to be able to have lunch with her children. we can think innovatively about addressing the childcare needs that we have in British Columbia and indeed across Canada if we think outside the box a little bit more and maybe work with more small business owners who want to hire those workers and who want to have an environment where those workers can be close to their children and maybe share lunch together once in a while. Thank you for your time today, Madam Speaker.
I'm glad to hear that my friend and the member from Mission-Matsqui-Fraser Canyon is among the thousands of British Columbians saving $550, $450 a month in their childcare fees as a result of these investments. And I agree that more needs to be done to increase spaces. Certainly, the labor shortage across the country is not specific only to childcare, but it is in every sector. I'm also thrilled to hear that he's an advocate for means testing for various programs, especially given the Conservatives' previous version of the Canada Child Benefit was a universal program that sent thousands and thousands of dollars to millionaire families. However, I'd also say that this is an education program, right? This is all about education. So I would question whether or not public schools should be available to wealthier families. I believe it should be, and I think early learning and childcare should also be available to wealthier families. So my question is, how can we, in a collaborative way, increase the labor force and make sure that there's more spaces in the communities that don't have enough?
Well, in respect to means testing, I believe that at the end of the day, I chose to put my children in childcare, and I chose to take on the economic and fiscal responsibility of paying for that. I believe that early learning education for children has to be treated a little bit differently than we look at school-aged programs. I'm not challenging that the government does or does not have a certain role in that process, but I do believe that parents need to play an integral role in making those decisions. And that's why I do believe that more should have been done to address the daycare shortages in Indigenous communities as a first priority, because my constituents don't have access to the same programs that I do based on where they live.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his intervention. He spoke a little bit about workers. One demographic he spoke about are many immigrant families that choose to become childcare workers. 98%, I'd like to also share through you, Madam Speaker, of early childhood educators are women. 1/3 are immigrants and non-permanent residents. And more often, workers within early childhood education are also racialized. And within those systems, we know it's exploitive. We know workers are not earning enough money. And I, through you, Madam Speaker, I question the concern about this focus on public and not-profit care, because after the Liberal government came out with the announcement prioritizing that, they funded 22,500 private spaces in Alberta. So I don't really understand what the hysteria is about. I would wonder if my honourable colleague would agree with me.
So the honourable members used up over a minute, and I do want to get to another question. The honourable member for Mission-Matsqui-Fraser Canyon.
Well, as the member from Winnipeg knows, is that the agreement signed with British Columbia was different than the agreement signed with Manitoba, where she's from. So I can't. We have to look at every agreement between the provinces individually. I don't believe that the province of British Columbia, which is an NDP government, rightfully gave some of the daycare workers a raise when this program went through to retain some of those workers, and I think that's a positive thing. My family relies on those workers. I put my trust with those women to take care of my children and to do a wonderful job every day. They deserve to be compensated in a fair way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It continues to amaze me how much he's like a Green Party candidate, because it's in our platform that we need workplace childcare for all the reasons he just discussed. And I'd love him to expand on, because I think C35 is consistent with putting childcare spaces where people can visit their kids throughout the day. If he'd want to comment more on the advantages of workplace childcare, that would be great.
And you know why I love hearing from my colleague on the opposite side is that we have a parliament to parlay and to talk and to discuss ideas. And if there's agreement between political parties or an idea race, that's what this chamber is all about. We come here to do exactly that. So I do believe and support private corporations who see a need and a way to retain workers by giving and working with their business to provide those extra services to retain workers and train them and to give childcare as well. I think the Government of Canada should incentivize that and encourage it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.